Scott Hurst is standing by with more for us. Good morning, Scott. What can you tell us about what the courts have said so far and what Trump is now looking for from the Supreme Court?
Good morning, Renee. Of course, this could be a big setback to U.S. President Donald Trump and his policy to really reorder the global trading economy, as we've seen him do aggressively since he retook the White House back in January, really declaring a national emergency, saying this is why he has to impose these tariffs, saying the U.S. had been ripped off by trading partners for many decades at this point, and vowed that because of the tariffs, money would flow into the U.S. economy and ultimately help the U.S. economy. Now, many economists, however, argue it would inevitably be the American consumer that pays the brunt of much of these tariffs. The U.S. president saying in response, as you heard, that without the tariffs, the company could be in serious trouble. And so here is the ruling late last week, last Friday, as you mentioned, a federal appeals court ruled that Trump's so-called liberation tariffs are illegal, as well as tariffs imposed earlier on countries like Canada and Mexico, other so-called national emergency tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and those are in relation to the flow of fentanyl. So the ruling states that Trump exceeded his powers under the national security statute that he used to impose them, which allowed him to bypass Congress. And so Trump has now vowed to take this ruling to the Supreme Court, hoping that they could reinstate his tariffs, meaning that the U.S. could continue to collect these taxes from other trading partners around the world, Renee, including, of course, Canada.
So what could a decision either way mean for countries like Canada facing these tariffs?
Yeah, so immediately what this means, the tariffs will remain in place until an appeal process has been taken place. And so they will remain in place until at least October 14th to allow time for the government to file a Supreme Court appeal. And so right now there isn't any immediate effect. But the big question, where does this leave Trump's trade agenda? Well, ultimately, it might have to refund some of the import taxes that it has already collected, and that would deliver a big financial blow to the U.S. Treasury. According to reports, revenue from tariffs have totaled so far close to $160 billion by July. So the ruling, however, does not take into account the tariffs imposed on things like steel and aluminum, as well as punishing tariffs on the auto sector. So those seemingly are untouched despite this ruling, and those tariffs, as we've already seen, Renee, have proven to be quite devastating for the Canadian economy specifically.
All right, CTV's Scott Hurst reporting for us from our national newsroom. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Renee.